to the Comics Experience Graphic Novel of the Month Club for the month of January. Our book for the Comics Masterpieces Club this month is Kingdom Come. It is, in fact, a comics masterpiece. We could not be more honored to have its author, Mark Waid, who is here on the split screen with us. Hello, Mark.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us.
No, my pleasure. Absolutely. By the way, I got to say, you're looking healthy.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm feeling healthy. I'm feeling good. Feeling strong. Getting ready to take on comics again. You know,
Good. Yeah. All right. We need that. We need you in the fight. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So you were showering me with compliments and I interrupted. So go on.
Yeah. No, you're an amazing writer. In fact, look, dude, I have this much notes of like things that you've done, and that's like Jesus. Like any other person's career would be half of this list. You have done so many things.
I have been very, very blessed, man. I have been really lucky. It has been like 32 years nonstop. Never had to pick up the phone, and that's not a humble brag. That's I can't believe this. That's like nobody gets a career like that. So I know I couldn't be happier. I'm thrilled that you have that many notes.
What's your earliest memory of comics?
It's the Batman TV show. I was 3 years old, and maybe like a little bit, maybe 4. And my dad saw the TV show and was coming on, and he remembered Batman when he was a kid, and plunked me down in front of the TV, and that was it, man. I was just sold. And so he bought me my first Batman comic in like March of '66, and I never stopped. I just kept piling on. Still do.
Looking online, and online is always murky. It says you started working at Amazing Heroes and writing it at Comics Buyer's Guide in the 80s is what it says, in the 80s, which is maddeningly vague.
Yes.
Do you remember selling your first piece?
I do. It was to Amazing Heroes, actually. And it was something on Superman, and it was about, I don't know, Red Kryptonite or something like that.
Okay.
And suddenly I'm a published author. It was awesome. And that was 84, maybe.
Okay. You don't remember the issue number? Do you remember the issue number?
39. I mean, Amazing Heroes 39. That sounds right to me.
Pretty early. Okay. Yeah.
And so I had the taste at that point. And of course I was following all those magazines. I was absorbing everything. And I figured that was maybe the way in, because at the same time, I was also working the conventions in Dallas a lot. And so if you're the guy volunteering to take Dave Sim to and from the airport at 3 a.m, then you get to talk to Dave Sim for half an hour.
Sure.
And that made connections. That, the fan stuff, calling up editors for information about upcoming stuff for Amazing Heroes, those really forged the bonds and made the connections and made me known at DC. So when they were looking for another associate editor, I got the call.
What was DC editorial like back in those days? That seems like a really fascinating time where the direct market was clearly the thing, but it was so new at that point.
Right. But we were coming off of Watchmen, and we were coming off of Dark Knight. Yeah. And the whole sense up there was that anything goes. And Dick was this amazing ringmaster. I learned more about editorial and how to manage creatives from Dick than anybody, because Dick's attitude was, you hire the best people for the job and you get the hell out of the way.
Yeah.
And let them do what they do well and don't nitpick.
Yeah.
And that was the sort of the editorial ethos up there. And so it really was a sense of experimentation. It really was a time for experimentation. It was much easier to get a green light on a project because it looked like it could be cool, rather than having to justify the dollars and cents.
Yeah.
And it was just a lot looser up there. And there was still structure that I had to learn, but by and large, it was a lot more freewheeling than I see today, which is, good and bad. I mean, you also got a lot of crap out of that. You got a lot, for every Watchmen, you get Sonic Disruptors, right? You get Robotech Defenders, but there's still that sense of, comics there's a whole new energy to it that wasn't here in 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Because suddenly all the kids who were reading comics in the 60s are now running movie studios and TV studios. And that's as much the success of Dark Knight and Watchmen as anything, is that not just the audience was taking it seriously, but also like media types were taking it seriously and paying attention. So that's a whole new breath of fresh air. 1986, I would think I still say is one of the most important years in comics history.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, to the extent that really I opened my store in 1989, so it was kind of the comics that were coming out then was like, oh, now I've got to open a store. This has got to happen, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this book. That's the reason
Sure.
that we actually are here.
Happy to.
It seems to me that I'm just sort of looking at this from a kind of 10 years or 30 years in
25. Yeah.
But you know, you came onto Flash in 92 and Kingdom Comes 96. So you're still doing Flash, but Flash was building. Like, I guess what I'm asking is this is a big book. This is not just some comic book, right?
Right.
And so whoop, 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 whoop. Did you realize that when it was coming together with you and Alex? Did you guys know what it was you had? I suppose is the first question.
I didn't know until the first issue hit. I didn't know until the first issue came out, and suddenly I realized what we had, and it was terrible timing because I was just about to start the script of the fourth one.
Right.
And I froze like you wouldn't believe. I just drowning in flop sweat all of a sudden. Oh my God. And so the fourth one took me like 3 times as long to write as the first 3. But we knew there was something special going on here, but we didn't know it was going to be that huge. We had Marvel's as a precedent, so it wasn't a complete stunning surprise. But no one could have predicted we would be having this conversation 27 years later. No.
Yeah. Okay.
Or whatever it was.
Yeah. How did the book get pitched?
It was Alex. I mean, I cannot ever talk about this book without saying, look, all props to Alex. To some degree, I was just the guy grabbing onto the train as it was whipping past the station. But Alex came in with a bunch of drawings, a bunch of character sketches, and some rough notes, some ideas for maybe a scene here or maybe a thing here, but it didn't have cohesiveness. And that, by his own admission, it didn't have cohesiveness. It didn't have a story. And he was looking for someone to help him craft that into, a narrative. And Archie Goodwin tapped me because if you're going to do this kind of book, going in the places where Alex wants to go, you need the guy who knows everything about DC Comics ever. Yeah. And so they sent him a few issues of Flash to take a look at to show I wasn't a complete fraud. And then they brought me on board, and we sat there at an Irish restaurant over lunch for the Dan Raspler, Archie Goodwin, Alex, and I, and we sat there, and Alex talked about the story. And I wasn't sure I was the right guy. And I wasn't sure I was the right guy, and I wasn't sure I was the right guy. And all of a sudden, it just sort of, as we were talking, he and I started connecting on what the characters meant and who the characters were on a fundamental level. And at that point I realized, okay, we got something here. So we went away from that. And then I flew to Chicago, I guess, a little while later, and Alex and I spent like a long weekend just banging out a framework. And from then on, it was just straight up collaboration, just back and forth. Back in the days of fax machines, we just shoot stuff back and forth every day.
In one interview, Mark commented on the significance to him of the scene with Clark's glasses in Kingdom Come, but some of the audio went out in the interview. What does that scene mean to you?
Not this interview, but a previous one.
Yeah.
That was the moment that I knew I got Kingdom Come. We're sitting at that table, we're having the conversation, and Alex and I are talking about how it might end and some things. And I had this mental image of Superman at the very end of the story, just for the first time in the entire story, just putting his glasses back on and becoming human again at the end of the story. And once I had that image, that was it. Now I got the story. Now I totally understand. And I own 2 pages of Kingdom Come. And those are the 2 pages, the very end. I don't have the splashy pages with people in costumes. I didn't need those, but Alex was kind enough to give me the pages of Superman putting his glasses back on.
Yeah.
That's that's how it works for me a lot of times. It's just a flash of an image, something striking that I don't have. I don't want to force it in, but it'll give me something. To me, when I write comics, a lot of times it's like it's like putting all the cards face down on the table, and you're like pulling up one, and you have an idea for one idea, and then you pull up another one, and here's another separate idea, and you pull up enough, and you start to put them together.
Yeah.
Suddenly this idea might connect to this idea, and before I know it, I've got a script. But that's kind of how it happens. So again, a very long answer to a very short question, but that's the answer to the Clark Kent question.